Good evening. A homeowner digging for a sewer line in Lockport, Louisiana today made a grisly discovery: bones.
Bones that could be used to help solve the disappearance of a woman 8 years ago. Mike Ross is standing by live in Lafourche Parish with this report. Mike?
Angela, this is a tragic mystery that began back in 1984 in a small house here in Lafourche Parish, just a few hundred yards down this little country lane behind me. A gruesome discovery made in that backyard just a few days ago may help resolve the anguish of a Lafourche Parish family. Sheriff's deputies and a prison work crew scattered today. When we arrived this afternoon, investigators on the scene would not talk to us about this case. Now, a work crew installing a septic tank on Friday, we are told, reportedly found human remains in the backyard of a house at the end of Bourgeois Lane. Now, family members say they've been told by investigators here in Lafourche Parish that the bones are the remains of Connie.
Human bones found buried behind a house have been positively identified as the remains of Connie Gaudet, who disappeared almost 8 years ago. Mike Ross reports tonight that investigators still don't know how Gaudet died or who buried her next to her own home.
A cold rain fell on the site where the grisly discovery was made last Friday. LSU experts confirmed last night that the human bones found buried here are the remains of Connie Gaudet. The news just confirmed what Connie's family had suspected since she vanished nearly 8 years ago.
Just hope that we can find out what happened to her and we can finally put her in a resting place like a normal person, not like an animal like she has been.
What I want now is justice for whoever did it to her. And I'm sure somebody has done it to her because, like Dina was saying, she didn't bury her own self.
Even though we know for sure now that Connie Gaudet was buried here, there are still many unanswered questions about this mystery. How did Connie die? The exact cause of death won't be determined by experts for another 2 to 4 weeks, if ever. Who wrote the letter supposedly from Connie that said her husband Dale was not to blame for her disappearance and that she had run off with another man? Connie's former co-workers at Baudouin's supermarket never believed that story.
I always did feel like, she had, hadn't ran away. The way she felt, toward her kids,
We had discussed it and talked about it and theorized, but actually being able to solve this mystery that has went for so long is just too good to be true.
The Lafourche Sheriff's Office does not anticipate an arrest warrant until the cause of death is determined. Dale Gaudet is still not considered a suspect, but investigators plan to interview him again. Connie's family is worried now about the safety and welfare of her 2 children, Melissa and Stacy, now ages 12 and 10, who are reportedly still with Dale and his family.
For 8 years they've been dealing with their mama left them. Now they have to deal with their mama's dead. Their mama was murdered.
So the key questions remain unanswered. How did Connie Gaudet die? And who buried her in her own backyard? In Lockport, I'm Mike Ross, Channel 4 Eyewitness News.
And late this afternoon, Dale Gaudet declined comment about the discovery of his wife's remains. Gaudet says he wants to consult with an attorney before making any statements. Autopsy now shows that Gaudet was indeed the victim of a deadly attack.
The gruesome discovery was made here 3 months ago. Human bones were found buried under the rose garden of this house near Lockport. In late November, lab tests confirmed the bones are the remains of Connie Gaudet, who mysteriously vanished nearly 8 years ago. Experts at LSU have spent the past several weeks examining the remains to pinpoint the cause of death. For the first time, the Lafourche Sheriff's Office has classified this as a homicide. Officials now think they have a good idea of how Connie Gaudet died. The Sheriff's Office says Connie was killed by a blow to the head with a yet unidentified weapon. Officials say the fatal injury was not caused by a fall or other accident.
Connie didn't deserve what she got.
Connie's family is glad another piece of the puzzle is now in place.
I don't feel like anybody in the family has been able to heal from this because they've never been able to understand. And all we want and all we've ever wanted is to find who did this to her, and to make them pay.
The question remains, who murdered Connie Gaudet and buried her in her own backyard? Connie's husband, Dale, who family members claim told them Connie had run off with another man, is not officially listed as a suspect, although he has been questioned. Dale still has custody of the couple's 2 daughters, now ages 10 and 12. Investigators don't feel the kids are in danger. A detective in the case tells us the murder weapon has not been found. Portable X-ray equipment was brought to the house recently to aid in the search. The LaFourche Sheriff's Office says it's pleased with the progress of the investigation in the past few weeks. A spokesman is confident the case will be strong enough to go to a grand jury.
You know, and I know they're working hard on it, and I just hope that we will see justice done. And I pray for that day.
That prayer may be answered soon. It appears the 8-year-long mystery of what happened to Connie Gaudet may be a big step closer to finally being solved. In Lockport, I'm Mike Ross, Channel 4 Eyewitness News.
The investigators are still waiting for a detailed report from LSU anthropologists who've been studying Connie Gaudet's remains. Officials won't speculate on when the case of Connie Gaudet will be handed over to the grand jury.
8 years ago, Connie Gaudet disappeared in the middle of the night. A year ago, her husband Dale sold their house near Lockport. Last November, when new owners were installing a septic system, Connie's skeletal remains were found buried in the backyard. Gordon Guidry and Ralph DeVilliers are with the crew that made the gruesome discovery. What did you see?
I found some bones in that trench we was digging for the drain field. And I found some red rags and everything, and like a piece of sacks and everything I found. I sure didn't feel good, I guarantee you, because I didn't know what I had found.
Well, it's just sort of unbelievable, really.
Gordon and Ralph are among several witnesses called before the grand jury today. This is a mystery that has troubled and baffled the small town for years. Shortly after Connie vanished, a mysterious letter surfaced that reportedly said she had run off with another man and that her husband Dale was not to blame for her disappearance. Do you believe that letter came from Connie?
No, I don't believe it came from Connie. First of all, Connie wouldn't have left the kids. Second of all, Connie, there's no place Connie could have gone to have fallen in love. She was a home person. She was a mother.
Investigators say Connie Gaudet was killed by a blow to the head and that she suffered other injuries at the time of her death. When Connie's bones were found here, her family expressed sorrow, but also relief that they had at last found out what happened to her. Now they're hoping that whomever is responsible for her death may be brought to justice soon. Now, police still say that Dale Gaudet, Connie's husband, is not officially a suspect in this case, although he has been questioned several times in the past several months about her disappearance and death. Now, I talked to the DA in this case just a short while ago. He said he expects the grand jury to wrap up its deliberations within the next half an hour to an hour, and there is a possibility of indictments tonight, and officials are telling me if indictments are handed down, they expect to make an arrest in this case tonight. John?
All right, thanks, Mike Ross, live in Thibodaux. Young people from New Orleans...
Her indictment in the Connie Gaudet case is returned against the Lockport woman's husband. A full house is on hand in St. Bernard tonight to protest a proposed...
Appeared.
Now, Jim Henderson and meteorologist Dave Barnes. This is Louisiana's news leader, Channel 4's Eyewitness News Night Watch.
Good evening. More than 8 years after she had been reported missing, a murder indictment tonight in the Connie Gaudet case.
The suspect, the former Lockport woman's husband. Mike Ross reports from Thibodaux.
Dale Gaudet has been a warrant for your arrest for second-degree murder.
Dale Gaudet was taken into custody shortly after the indictment was issued. Gaudet is now accused of murdering his wife Connie, who vanished mysteriously back in 1984.
We feel pretty good that they come up with an indictment on him, so now we're just going to have to wait for the court actions to see what's going to happen now.
Connie's family says Dale has claimed for years that he didn't know what happened to his wife when she vanished. But last November, Connie's skeletal remains were found buried in the backyard of their former home near Lockport, ending years of speculation about what really happened to her. Experts who examined her remains concluded that Connie died from a blow to the head. After hearing from several witnesses, it took a grand jury less than half an hour to indict Gaudet.
The charge was for second degree. Is there any reason why it wasn't first degree?
That was the law in existence in 1984 at the time of the disappearance. And I really, at this time, I'm not at liberty to say anything else about the case other than the grand jury has returned its indictment today.
Connie Gaudet's family says they're relieved the case is moving forward. Dale Gaudet wouldn't comment tonight, but he has said in the past that he did not kill his wife. Dale Gaudet will go before a bond hearing tomorrow morning, and his lawyer says he's going to enter a not guilty plea to the murder charge. At the Lafourche Parish Jail, I'm Mike Ross, Eyewitness News Night Watch.
And for the second night in a row,
yesterday, March the 19th. In the news this morning, a Lafourche Parish man accused in the murder of his wife 8 years ago plans to plead innocent today. Dale Gaudet was booked last night with the second-degree murder of his wife, Connie Gaudet, who disappeared in 1984.
Also, state wildlife officials plan to move.
Arrested last night shortly after a grand jury indicted him. His wife, Connie, disappeared 8 years ago. The woman's bones were buried in a rose garden in their former home site last November. Well, New Orleans controversial sanitation director Jim Lee has resigned
on protecting.
News 8 at 6.
The response to Universal's warehouse.
You may recall workers found Connie Gaudet's remains buried in the yard of her home. And now a Lafourche Parish grand jury has indicted Dale Gaudet for the murder of his wife. News 8's Robbie Chavez has reaction today from Lockport.
The mound of dirt where the remains of Connie Gaudet were found is still fresh. Those who befriended the couple for years still can't believe how the case is unfolding.
It was very sad. What else could I think? I mean, because I still don't think he's guilty. I mean, you wouldn't think it's possible that he'd do it.
I was somewhat relieved that they had pinpointed someone.
The sister of the murdered victim has been waiting for years for the arrest, but says it will never make up for the loss.
At the time of the disappearance, it was a loss at that time. Then when they found the body, it was a greater loss, but a relief because we finally knew. And we did have a burial service for her in January. That was a loss. So we have relived this loss several times during this 8 years, and it's still not over with.
Dale Gaudet recently moved into this house in a prominent subdivision with his 2 daughters. His arrest leaves many unanswered questions for his new neighbors.
Scared, because not really knowing if it's true or not.
Family members say they never understood the disappearance of Connie Gaudet in the first place. They're hoping a trial will help put an end to the entire mystery. However, this time they vow to follow the case through and not give up on justice as they did 8 years ago. In Lockport, Robbie Chavez, WVUE News 8.
Robbie tells us Dale Gaudet is planning to plead not guilty to those second-degree murder charges. This morning, his bond was set at $100,000. Forensic experts have already ruled Connie Gaudet died from a blow to the head.
A traffic stop in Algiers landed 3.
Gaudet is accused of murdering his wife Connie 8 years ago and burying her in their rose garden. Cheryl Hickman's just back from Thibodeau and joins us now with the latest. Cheryl?
John, Dale Gaudet had asked that his trial be moved out of Lafourche Parish because of all the publicity surrounding the case since Connie Gaudet's skeleton was found last year. So the judge called in 2 mock juries and let state and defense lawyers question them about the case. Most of the men and women said they knew something about Connie Gaudet's murder, but not much.
People talk about it. You know how people talk. You're going to hear one say this and the other one say this, and I just really never paid no mind to it.
Other than what I read on the newspaper, I didn't know too much about details of it.
Later, Judge Sidney Ardon reviewed television and newspaper reports about the case and then denied the defense request to move the trial. The district attorney was pleased.
The jury selection and the questioning of the jurors today certainly indicated that all of those jurors were willing to give the defendant and the state a fair and an impartial trial.
Connie Gaudet's body was dug up from the rose garden of her home shortly after Dale Gaudet sold the house last year. The new owners were putting in a septic tank when they found the bones. Connie had mysteriously disappeared in February 1984. Her family never believed a letter, supposedly written by Connie, that she had run off with a man named Ted. Investigators eventually charged Dale Gaudet with the murder. We obtained 2 search warrants that give a lot more information about the case. They talk about the letter that went to Connie's parents. It was supposedly misaddressed. FBI handwriting analysis of that letter was inconclusive about whether Connie or Dale Gaudet wrote it. And Gaudet's second wife, now divorced from him, told investigators that she was in the Gaudet house shortly after Connie vanished and saw a large red stain on the carpet. John?
All right, thanks, Cheryl. New Orleans police second-degree murder. His wife's body was found buried in their backyard. 23-year-old Connie Gaudet was reported missing 8 years ago. Dale Gaudet had asked that the trial be moved because of publicity surrounding the case. Also in court today, the Lafourche District Attorney admitted the case against Gaudet is circumstantial. Butch Nakhan says they don't know exactly where or when Connie Gaudet was killed, but he says a dozen witnesses will testify that Gaudet made conflicting statements about his wife's whereabouts and asked other people to lie for him about her. It'll be another month.
Weapon, and for years there was no body. 24-year-old Connie Gaudet's remains were found buried in the yard near her home in 1991. She'd mysteriously disappeared in 1984. Dale Gaudet was her husband when she disappeared. Today he's on trial for second-degree murder. The prosecution is expected to call more than 40 witnesses, including experts who analyzed what was left of the victim. As of late this afternoon, 2 jurors had been seated in this case.
In the national news,
back in 1984. As Leslie Hill reports, the jury will ultimately be taken through several twists and turns in this case.
Dale and Connie Gaudet lived in this house with their 2 children. When Connie Gaudet disappeared 9 years ago, authorities thought she had left her husband. But 2 years ago, as the new homeowners were having a sewer system installed, bones later identified as Connie Gaudet's were found near the house. Prosecutors say experts have found that Gaudet was shot in the lower back, but that she probably died from a blow to the back of the head. Her husband, Dale Gaudet, has pleaded not guilty in the second-degree murder case, which is based solely on circumstantial evidence. Jury selection could take 3 or 4 days in this case. Attorneys are working from an initial pool of 250 people, and depending on how difficult that task becomes, the judge could still move the trial out of town. The case has been headline news in the local paper, complete with details a jury may never even hear. Prosecutors say Gaudet has given several conflicting statements about his first wife's disappearance. His second wife is scheduled to be just one of more than 40 witnesses to testify for the prosecution. With photographer David Keel in Lafourche Parish, Leslie Hill, 6 News.
And as of late this afternoon, 2 jurors had been seated in the Gaudet case. Norman?
Too, I guess people feel that they wish it would have been put in another parish because there's not too many people that do not know about it and have feelings set on it already.
Prosecutors told prospective jurors that the case against Dale Gaudet is built on circumstantial evidence and that there aren't any eyewitnesses to the crime. The FBI crime lab now says Connie was shot in the back. Prosecutors say she died from a blow to the head. The woman Dale married after Connie disappeared is scheduled to testify during the trial. She has told investigators that Dale would sometimes call out Connie's name and talk to her as if she were in the same room with her. The trial is expected to last about 2 weeks, and if convicted, Dale Gaudet could get life in prison without any chance of parole. In Thibodaux, I'm Mike Ross, Channel 4 Eyewitness News.
A judge has upheld...
In their flower garden. Dale Gaudet claims he's not guilty of murdering his wife Connie in '84. If he's convicted, Gaudet faces life in prison.
His wife. Dale Gaudet says he is not guilty of murdering his wife Connie back in 1984 and burying her body in their flower garden. 10 jurors so far have been chosen. 2 more panel members plus 2 alternates are still needed. In Waco, another cult member has emerged from the side of the house, and he did that back in 1984. Workers installing a septic tank for the new owners who bought the house made the gruesome discovery 2 years ago. Healthcare.
A lot more coming up at 5.
Prosecutors claim that Dale Gaudet had found another woman and wanted to get rid of his wife Connie back in 1984. Gaudet told police his wife simply vanished, but workers digging a septic tank 2 years ago after the house was sold found her skeletal remains. Testimony in the trial gets underway tomorrow. In a state of chaos, that's the
Today in the trial of Dale Gaudet, who's accused of killing his wife, then burying her body in a rose garden. Mike Ross is covering the trial and joins us now from the newsroom. Mike?
John, prosecutors say they will prove that Gaudet used murder to get out of a troubled marriage and to retain custody of his 2 children. The defense claims there's no direct proof that Dale did it.
At this time.
Dale Gaudet plans to take the witness stand in his own defense.
I have no comment at this time.
The prosecution claims Gaudet was anything but a faithful and loving husband. In opening arguments, prosecutors said Gaudet murdered his wife Connie back in 1984 because he was having a sexual affair with another woman whom he later married. The prosecution said, quote, Dale had found someone new. He wanted her. There was but one way. Connie had to go. Dale allegedly buried his wife's body in a rose garden next to their house. The prosecution says 2 neighbors will testify that they saw Dale digging a knee-deep hole where Connie's skeletal remains were later found.
We hope to call approximately 7 witnesses this afternoon And all total, we plan on calling approximately 40 witnesses in the trial.
Connie's disappearance remained a mystery in Lockport for years. Prosecutors said today that Dale made a critical mistake in 1991 when he sold the house. New owners discovered Connie's remains while installing a new septic tank. Later in the trial, the jury will be taken to the site where the bones were found. Gaudet's defense lawyer argues that the evidence is all circumstantial.
Do you think your client can get a fair trial in this area with all the pretrial publicity?
Well, of course, that's the basis of the change of venue motion. We don't feel that he could, although I must say I was heartened by the response of the jurors in their ability to be fair in the case.
Alcock wanted the trial moved out of Lafourche Parish, but today State Judge Sidney Ordon turned him down.
While some of the jurors may have read about the case, that certainly they were fair and impartial, and that they would be able to reach a decision based upon the evidence presented in court. I'm very satisfied with that. So was the court.
Now, the jury may have a very tough chore tomorrow. If the judge allows, prosecutors say they will bring Connie Gaudet's skeletal remains into the courtroom on a stretcher for the jury's inspection and to allow experts to explain how she was killed. Angela?
Thank you, Mike.
Connie continues in the murder trial of 35-year-old Dale Gaudet. Gaudet is accused of killing his wife Connie in 1984 and burying her body in a family garden. Her remains were found 7 years later when the new owners of the Gaudet home put in a new sewer system. Experts are expected to testify that
9 years ago and burying her body in the garden of their home. The crime happened in the small town of Lockport. The trial is at the courthouse in Thibodaux. Today, the prosecution claimed Dale Gaudet was having an affair in 1984 and killed his wife so that he could marry his mistress. They say he buried her body in the garden to hide the crime and told relatives she'd run off. The body was discovered in 1991 when a crew put a septic tank in the couple's home. Testimony in the trial continues tomorrow. In Mississippi,
in opening arguments yesterday, prosecutors told a Lafourche Parish jury that 35-year-old Dale Gaudet murdered his wife Connie so that he could be with another woman and have custody of his 2 children. Gaudet is expected to testify in his own behalf. The
prosecutor's claim was murdered by her husband, then buried in the rose garden of their home. The courtroom drama took place in Thibodaux. Mike Ross has the story.
Excuse us, please. Connie Gaudet's skeletal remains were carried to the courtroom in a cardboard box, clutched in the arms of a forensics expert. Jurors got to see up close what prosecutors claim are the fatal wounds inflicted on Connie by her husband, Dale. It was a difficult thing for Connie's family to see.
It's hard. It's hard. I mean, to know, spectators, they're looking at it as the woman that they found. But to me, that's the person I grew up with. That's the person, went on vacations with, that we always lived next door.
In late 1991, Connie's remains were found buried next to her former home in Lockport, 7 years after she mysteriously disappeared. The LSU forensic anthropologist testified that Connie Gaudet suffered several injuries at or near the time of her death, including a broken skull and several breaks to bones in her spine. Dale Gaudet sat calmly in the courtroom today, showing no visible sign of emotion as his wife's skeleton was displayed to the jury. The 12-member jury also showed no signs of emotion as they viewed the remains. Gaudet's defense lawyers claim that investigators messed up the recovery of the skeleton so much that there's no way to accurately tell if the bones were broken when Connie died or when the remains were dug up.
Yeah, I believe.
This unusual courtroom scene was played out before a standing room only audience. The trial has become somewhat of a small-town spectacle.
It's somebody that I loved, and it's hard to sit there and, be talked about as specimens or bones or, it's hard.
But even so, Connie's family is glad that after so many years of waiting, the case is finally in court.
It's time to finish with it, so maybe now we can go on, once it's over with.
No comment at this time.
Dale Gaudet, meantime, continues his public silence about what's happening in the courtroom. In Thibodaux, I'm Mike Ross, Channel 4 Eyewitness News.
A McNeil, Mississippi
her in their garden. The prosecutors entered Connie Gaudet's skeleton as evidence today. They say the bones prove that she was beaten to death, and they say her husband, Dale Gaudet, is the man who killed her. The prosecution claims Gaudet was having an affair back in 1984 and killed his wife to be with his mistress. He told everyone that his wife had run off. Connie Gaudet's remains were discovered in the rose garden of their former home in 1991. That's when new owners had some construction work done. The prosecution continues its case tomorrow.
New Orleans police were called to the 2,500.
So pathologists could explain how they believe she died. 35-year-old Dale Gaudet allegedly killed his wife in 1984 so he could marry another woman. Divers will try
and apologizing for murdering his first wife. Donna Foray married Gaudet shortly after his first wife, Connie, disappeared in 1984. They divorced 2 years later. During that time, Foray said Gaudet would stand in their bathroom apologizing aloud to Connie and saying that he and their 2 children missed her. 2 years ago, Connie Gaudet's skeletal remains were found in the garden of the couple's former home. The bones have been submitted as evidence in the trial that happened yesterday. The testimony in the trial continues tomorrow.
They also viewed a field across from the house to get the perspective of neighbors who say they saw Dale Gaudet in a hole with a shovel after his wife was reported missing. The defense begins its case tomorrow afternoon. A New Orleans man is in jail
and burying her in their rose garden 9 years ago. A friend of Gaudet's told the jury he called Connie Gaudet's parents after her disappearance and told them he'd seen her with a man in a restaurant, adding Dale Gaudet told him to make that call. Now, the prosecution contends Gaudet wanted to make it appear that his wife was having an affair. Joe Watson says Gaudet was worried Connie's parents might try to take his 2 kids away, and that's why he wanted the call made. The defense gets to start calling its witnesses tomorrow.
Disappearance, he said he didn't know. Following Dale Gaudet's testimony, 3 other witnesses took the stand, and the defense wrapped up its case. Stephanie Regal, Eyewitness News, Night Watch.
Closing arguments in the case are scheduled for tomorrow morning, and jury deliberations will begin after that.
Dale Gaudet is on trial in Thibodeau for the murder of his wife 9 years ago. He was questioned by prosecutors for about an hour today. He told jurors he did not know how his wife Connie was killed or how her body wound up in their garden. Prosecutors will continue calling witnesses tomorrow. An AIDS-infected
to defend himself against charges that he murdered his wife and buried her in the garden of their home. As News 8's Dion Floyd reports, a lot of people were on hand today to hear what Gaudet said while he was on the hot seat.
The lines outside the Lafourche Parish Courthouse started forming hours before the trial was to begin. For the past week, the proceedings have drawn almost everyone's interest here in Thibodeau. These people all want to know, did Dale Gaudet murder his wife Connie and bury her body in their yard? Many of these folks are interested in seeing this matter put to rest once and for all. They want to hear Gaudet's testimony for themselves, even though some have already formed their own opinions about the case.
I really hope deep down in my heart that the truth will prevail and he will be found guilty of this crime, because I really believe he did it.
Mr. Gaudet, how do you feel about the case at this point?
I have no comment right now.
But Gaudet had to talk about the case while in court today. He was put on the stand to testify. He maintained his wife disappeared on February 18th, 1984. He says probably with a lover. He describes this phone conversation with her the day he says she left. She basically said that she'd left. She needed time to think over things. I said, "How did you leave?" She said she left with a friend. After the trial wrapped up, here's what one spectator had to say.
If he didn't do it, well, how did that body get in that yard? Had she been murdered and body found some other place, I'd have said okay, but who's going to hurt a woman and go in her yard and bury her?
So you didn't believe him?
No, I don't.
The Gaudet trial continues tomorrow with final arguments. In Thibodeau, Dion Floyd, WVUE, News 8.
Orleans.
Circulation at the Daily Common is normally 12,000, but it's increasing.
This is the biggest trial, obviously, that's hit Thibodeau probably in the last 25 years. And the sensational nature of the trial, obviously, has led to the crowds that have come to the courthouse. We're selling a few extra newspapers, and I'm sure the business office appreciates that a little bit more. But yeah, we've gotten a lot of attention in the paper. People are waiting for the paper to come out.
But the notoriety may soon die down. Now that the jury has the case, the district attorney cannot wait for it to be over.
It's been a lengthy one in terms of preparation, both in advance of trial and of trial. And all I can tell you is I hope the jury comes back quickly.
To give you an idea of what we were talking about, of how popular, if you will, this case has been in this town, there are people right now sitting inside the courtroom on the 3rd floor who are sitting waiting on the jury to come back. It may take 6 hours, maybe, who knows? And they're staying in their seats because the court has a line outside the courtroom, and if you leave, somebody replaces your seat. Of course, right now, again, hanging in the balance the fate of Dale Gaudet. The charge is second-degree murder, but the jury could come back and convict him of a lesser charge. We, of course, are waiting on that verdict, and when we have it, you'll have it. Reporting live from Thibodaux, Rick Blaylock.
Couple's Garden. Mike Ross is covering the bizarre trial of Dale Gaudet. He joins us now by telephone from Thibodaux with the latest. Mike?
Well, Bill, the closing arguments in this very strange murder case were given to the jury this afternoon. The prosecution said in its closing argument that there's no other logical suspect. They say no one else could have murdered Dale Gaudet's wife, Connie, and then buried her body in the couple's backyard. The defense says Dale Gaudet is entitled to the presumption of innocence and that the state has used guesswork and speculation to build its case against him. Gaudet's defense lawyer also said the state has failed to provide a smoking gun in this case. The prosecution countered, though, that there's no way Connie Gaudet could have been buried in her backyard without her husband knowing about it. Dale Gaudet now awaits the jury's verdict. The case went to the jury at about 4:20 this afternoon. If he's found guilty of second-degree murder, Dale Gaudet could spend the rest of his life in prison. And, Bill, at this moment, jury deliberations are continuing here in Thibodaux. We'll have an update for you at 6 o'clock.
All right, thank you, Mike.
That's our top story at 6.
Gaudet is accused of the 1984 murder of his wife. The jury has had the case for nearly 2 hours. News 8's Rick Blaylock is at the Thibodaux courthouse now and joins us now with more. Rick?
Well, Margaret, we can tell you that they're still going at it inside the court on the 3rd floor in the jury room, debating, as you said, the fate of Dale Gaudet. And what's interesting about this case is it has only been a week and a few days, but for many people, the judge, the jury, and of course the 125 people that are packing the courtroom each day for this trial, it has become a long trial. Do you think it's going well? How do you feel?
I have no idea. It's not up to me. It's up to the jury.
Gaudet had little to say today, but his attorney had lots to say, especially during closing arguments. Jim Alcock hammered away at the testimony of Gaudet's second wife, Donna Foray. She was the prosecution's chief witness. He called her a liar at least 10 times. Alcock also said the prosecution had no case except for the skeletal bones of Connie Gaudet. And even the DA admits that that's not hard evidence.
Well, I'm very comfortable that we presented all of the evidence that was available and all of the testimony that was available. And now it's in the hands of the jury. They began their deliberations about 20 after 4, and it's in their hands right now.
Well, what do you think?
I would hate to speculate at this stage. I'm comfortable with the case we presented. It was a circumstantial evidence case, but I also thought it was a strong circumstantial evidence case.
The jury has a lot to consider. They have heard from more than 40 witnesses. This woman sat on the jury of a previous murder case in this town.
They have to add up all this testimony and try to get everything straight in their head. And right now I can tell you they're all very confused because they're going to ask probably to see testimony. They're going to ask to see evidence again. There's many things that have to get sorted out. And I can almost guarantee you they don't all agree right now.
If convicted of second-degree murder, Dale Gaudet would face life in prison, mandatory life. Reporting live from Thibodaux, Rick.
Bizarre circumstances ever in a Lafourche Parish courtroom, from expert testimony with Connie Gaudet's skeletal remains being shown to Dale Gaudet's second wife saying that Dale would sometimes talk to Connie's ghost. Now, the jurors are trying to weigh all that they've heard.
I have no idea. It's not up to me. It's up to the jury.
Dale Gaudet walked to lunch with a woman reported to be his fiancée, not knowing if this could be one of his last bouts with freedom. Prosecutors claim he fractured Connie Gaudet's skull in 1984, shot her, then buried her in the garden near their home. Gaudet's remains weren't found for 7 years. In court, no murder weapon was ever presented, but prosecutors are sure of their case.
I'm very comfortable that we presented all of the evidence that was available and all of the testimony that was available. And now it's in the hands of the jury.
Defense attorney Jim Alcock tried to put doubts in the jury's mind, saying Dale Gaudet is not the two-headed monster prosecutors would have you believe. And again, the jury has a lot to deal with. They've heard 6 days of testimony in this case, and it is a second-degree murder charge against Dale Gaudet. He faces life in prison if convicted. Diana?
Imagine it could take quite a while, Leslie. All right, thank you.
No one knows.
Nope, no way of knowing that.
Burying her body in their garden. Mike Ross is covering the trial.
Prosecutors closed their case by posing a question to the jury. Who other than Dale Gaudet could have killed his wife Connie, then buried her in the backyard? The prosecution said if someone else had killed Connie, they wouldn't have taken the risk of burying her next to Dale's home. But the defense said the case against Dale Gaudet was built on guesswork and speculation. Gaudet's defense lawyer asked the jury if they thought Dale would be stupid enough to bury his wife, then sell the house and risk detection. The defense said there is no proof that Dale Gaudet is guilty. The prosecution is urging the jury to use their own common sense in deciding the case. In Thibodaux, I'm Mike Ross, Channel 4 Eyewitness News.
A mandatory sentence of life in prison. New Orleans police and burying her in the Rose Garden.
Governor Edwards opens the regular
Parish jury handed down the verdict tonight. Mike Ross reports family and friends of the victim hope this finally resolves a tragic mystery that haunted the small town of Lockport for nearly a decade.
Dale Gaudet was led off to jail in handcuffs. It took the jury less than 2.5 hours to convict him of second-degree murder. For the family of Connie Gaudet, the guilty verdict was a bittersweet victory.
I think justice has been served. We waited a long time for it, and it's finally come.
What are your emotions right now?
I guess relief, sadness.
The defense had argued that the state had failed to prove that Dale had killed his wife Connie back in 1984.
It was a circumstantial case from the beginning, and we felt that the proof was lacking. And the verdict should have been not guilty. So we're disappointed, naturally. Of course, there's the prospect of an appeal, but I haven't discussed that with my client at this point.
But the prosecution argued that no one but Dale could have buried Connie's body in the side yard of their former home near Lockport. The jury apparently agreed with the prosecution's charge that Dale covered up the murder for 7 years. Connie's remains were accidentally uncovered in 1991.
That's what it was. There was no one else but Dale Gaudet, from the evidence presented, that could have committed this crime. There was no one else, and the jury understood that.
I'm especially thankful for the family of Connie Gaudet, that they now have the satisfaction of knowing who was responsible for their loved one's death.
Connie's family says they will now try to protect the couple's 2 daughters, now ages 11 and 13, who have been in their father's custody since their mother disappeared.
Nothing will bring her, but now we have to work with her girls, do what she would want for the girls. And now our main concern is to help the girls recover from this tragedy.
The verdict may help end the ordeal for the family of Connie Gaudet. But for Dale Gaudet, the jury's decision begins a new ordeal. Life in prison without any chance for parole. I'm Mike Ross, Eyewitness News Night Watch.
of their home in Lockport, Louisiana. That's WVUE's top story tonight.
The trial has been taking place at the courthouse in Thibodaux. News 8's Rick Blaylock has been following it from the beginning, and he has this report on the verdict.
It took 2.5 hours for the jury to reach its verdict. While Dale Gaudet was led away, Connie Gaudet's family showed signs of relief.
Justice has been served. We waited a long time for it, and it's finally come. And now our main concern is to help the girls recover from this tragedy.
Dale Gaudet's second wife, who testified against him, was pleased as well.
All the pain I endured in all these years and today was worth it, just to know that justice will be done for my family, for Connie, and for her family, and Melissa and Stacy.
The prosecution put nearly 50 witnesses on the stand in this trial. In the beginning, the defense attorney asked each juror to look at the quality of the witnesses, not the quantity. But in the end, it looks like they went with the numbers.
That's difficult for a defendant to overcome because people become involved in the quantity, and they say, well, if there's that much there must be something to it. I tried to emphasize quality, but apparently it was to no avail.
Gaudet will be sentenced in April to mandatory life in prison. In Thibodaux, Rick Blaylock, WVUE News 8 tonight.
The 1992 Oscar statues. And then we're going to go to the kitchen. Ross wraps up the trial of Dale Gaudet.
Dale Gaudet was led off to jail in handcuffs. It took the jury less than 2.5 hours to convict him of second-degree murder. For the family of Connie Gaudet, the guilty verdict was a bittersweet victory.
Is about to begin. The men accused of savagely beating truck driver Reggie Denny will have their day in court. And Reggie Denny tells
anything that happened to her. She didn't have an enemy in the world.
When Dale married Connie, he never promised her a rose garden, but when he fell for another woman, police say he buried her there.
A lot of his behavior led me to believe that he was the only one that knew where Connie was.
The Secret Garden, tomorrow on Hard Copy. Because of the breaking news in Waco garden.
See, murder of his wife.
And 35-year-old Dale Gaudet still insists he didn't do it, but the victim's family is convinced justice has been done.
Last month, the jury ended the mystery surrounding Connie Gaudet's disappearance 9 years ago. That jury deciding her husband Dale killed her, buried her in a garden next to their home, then masterminded a cover-up. Connie's sister sensed from the start that Gaudet was guilty.
We only wish that we had Connie with us. If only we had known the things that were going on before she disappeared, we could have helped and maybe this wouldn't have happened. But it's really a burden to carry that for so long.
Landry was surprised as Gaudet's attorney asked the judge to let the convicted murderer out on bond pending appeal.
Given his total cooperation over the years, I felt strongly that bail should have been granted.
A motion for a new trial was also denied. Gaudet simply said, "No, sir," as Judge Ordone asked him if he'd have anything to say before the life sentence was handed down. But he had plenty to say to us as he left the courtroom.
I'd like to thank all of the people who supported me, my family, my friends, my fiance, all of the people who have been sending me cards and letters, people I don't know, wishing me best of luck.
What about your girls?
My girls will be fine. And I know God will get me out of this.
Connie's family hasn't yet decided whether to fight for custody of the couple's 2 children, who they say are doing well, considering. With photographer Tim Harland in Thibodeau, Leslie.